Hello guys, it's Kamil. Welcome to another video on Rust, just based on the book itself. And I think the book is just brilliant, so please go to it. It's dynamically updated and so on and so forth. It's definitely, definitely much more in depth than the videos will be, but it's maybe worth to watch them just for a quick summary of what you may expect from the chapter. So now let's go back to the video and let me start off with the additions that we have kind of omitted during last one because I just didn't have a proper read through things. So if I look at the appendix and additions, I'll support myself here. So what you can tell is that in Rust, you will have a constant 6-week release cycle, which means that the users will be getting a constant stream of updates every so often. And this could lead to one problem where you have so many different iterations or releases that eventually you just get really messed up with what was changed when. And actually, to address this issue, I believe what Rust team is doing, they will also collect all of the features changed in like during 2 or 3 years of releases of these 6 week cycles, and they will update all of the documentation and tooling along with that, and they will pretty much create a new edition which will pretty much be like another number like 2015, 2018, or 2021, which in fact are the only ones available at this particular time. And what is also nice thing is, like, for example, if you are actually in Rust or whatever, you specify Rust to 2021 inside of your crate. However, you have some stuff that is only supported in 2015. The Rust will default to 2015 so that it can help you with backward compatibility, right? I believe if I read correctly, also you can have multiple crates, like which that probably the packages can be composed of multiple crates, or you don't know, but so now you do. Then these crates can also be depending on different editions. Like, for example, most of your program can be dependent on 2015, but one of your crates is a bit newer and it actually has a support for keywords, let's say from 2018. So what you can do, you can simply just compile it because Rust will use 2015 for the main application and yet 2018 for your crate that needs it. And vice versa, it works a different way around as well. So if your crate, the new crate supports 2015, but the rest of your program supports 2019, that should also work fine. So that's it. There is also a little book on that you can look through. It's great, I believe. I've not looked a lot through it yet. I had a brief look. That's why I said I think it's great. But if you would like to have much more in-depth knowledge on editions, then by all means go ahead and break your legs on it. So this is the one. Next, let's go back to the topic of this video. So I may have not mentioned or I did that there are some common things between multiple languages like Python, C++, C Sharp, Golang, Rust. And one of them are variables. You're gonna have them pretty much everywhere to somehow define your data that you want to work with and or declare it, right, and initialize it. What else should I say is of course, very often you will also have keywords, and these keywords they also exist in Rust. And these keywords normally they're reserved, and in Rust they also are reserved. In Rust, what you have though is you have keywords that are actually in use, and you have keywords that are reserved for the future use. So you will not be able to use any of them for naming your variables, naming your functions, or other stuff. So just remember that. And you can view the list of them in Appendix A, which if I click will show you whatever you can check on your own too. And you can see there are some future ones too that are simply reserved for now. So that's gonna be on the keywords part. Let's go back to the variables. So now variables in Rust are immutable by nature, which means that, for example, if you define a variable, and I will show you how you can do that. So actually, let's open a new Rust project here. If I'll do cargo new variables, new Rust package, we should have it soon. May have to do this. Let me see, what have I done? I know. Okay, let's go back to Let's actually open a new terminal. I'll close this one completely. And now if I'll do the same stuff, variables. Oh, variables, that's quite bad. Let's change it back to variables. Okay, that's better. And if I'll come here now, if we go to main rs, let's remove this line. So to define a variable in Rust, you will use a let keyword. That's one way. So let keyword, and then you will provide a variable name, which should probably be composed of some alphanumeric characters. And I don't think they can start with a number. So you should remember on this, but they can start with an underscore as an example. In fact, if you are not using a variable, there actually is a good thing that you can use that, because then Rust will not give you a warning, or the compiler will not warn you. Let me show you this actually. So if I'll assign one to this underscore a variable, and if I'll run it, nothing will probably happen because I'm in the wrong place anyway. So let's go to the right place. But you can see there is nothing, right? However, if I remove this underscore from the front of the variable name, it will not really have an issue, like in terms of it will still compile fine. It will even run it, but it will also give you a warning. As you can see, it also tells you how you can possibly, like, well, what is on by default, it tells you. You can probably disable that. But what you can see here is it tells you can actually prepend the underscore, and then there'll be no problem. There'll be no warning next time you run it. But that's not our intent. What I wanted to show you is that there in fact are immutable. So let's create some addition here, some compound operator. Oops, sorry. And yeah, let me try to print this. And now what I expect to see, I expect compiler to complain about this piece of code, because this is immutable. I don't want to have this mutated. And actually, this is a great thing that it will do it for us. As you can see, first assignment to A, and then cannot assign twice to immutable variable. And that just makes sense. And for the developer, it's a great thing, because developer is quite sure that they cannot modify this variable if it's defined here as immutable. And Rust compiler, or Rust itself, is making you happy by giving you this message, yes? Because you pretty much are not allowed to have something that is undefined, right? For example, if somebody wants to change this and compiler allows it, then that could be bad, because you will not expect that. So this is definitely not the behavior you would like to get. Anyhow, what is also cool is that Rust, of course, allows you for mutable variables, and it's not very complex to do them, to add them. All you just need to add a mute keyword between the let and the variable name, or the identifier name. And what you can see now, oh, sorry, identifier, yes, so the name. If let's mute a now, and that will allow us to actually run this program successfully. And you can see some outputs 1 and 2, yes, maybe not very verbose, but good enough for us, I guess, to just show the concept. And now we have a mutable variable. Now, there's another thing. Rust actually is a strongly typed language, which means the compiler actually expects to know the types of the variables at the compile time rather than during the runtime. So if you look at this, you don't see me giving any types anywhere. And actually, this is possible with a lot of stuff in Rust, like with variable assignment. If you give it a scalar value or some primitive stuff, some primitive values like compound types as well, the primitive ones, Rust can infer the type for you. So in this case, it might infer I32, for example, for unsigned 32. But what we can also do, we can annotate it explicitly. And right now we're telling Rust to use a byte. And simply it's an unsigned. Bytes will be values from 0 to 255, just by the way. So if you run this now, that will actually work, as you can see. And that is perfect. So you can annotate, but you don't have to often do it. But there are times when you do have to do it. And I will give you an example. So for example, I have some string slice, and actually this one is a number, and I want to use it as a number, not as a slice. So what I can do, I can try to trim it in case it has some white space. I can try to get the number parsed, well, the string parsed into a numeric value, and I can unwrap because I'll get something called an enumeration, and that enumeration contains a couple of results, but I don't really care about the other one. I only care about the value itself, so I can unwrap it to make it easier. But don't worry, before long we'll come back to enumerations as well. So that's that. And now if I run this program, and you can see I'm not giving any type annotations, I expect compiler to complain. And yet it does, right? You can see it doesn't like something. Consider giving A an explicit type. Why is that? It's because Rust is simply compiler doesn't know what do we want. Yes, it's number one, but maybe it's I32, U8, whatever it is, right? It for him it's just a string the way it seems for now. So what do? We can do that, and now Rust know what we want, and if we run this, look, it works again. So that's great, and I believe that should be a good part to end the first video on variables, and we'll come back before long for another one. Thank you a lot for watching, and have a great time until then. Bye bye.